morning, and joining us for our webinar this morning. We are going to be talking about increasing accessibility and creating an inclusive classroom. My name is Shelly Lansford, and I'm a digital learning specialist. Co-hosting with me today, I have two fabulous instructional coaches. I have Elena Plotnick and Stephanie Calco. And you will see on the slide that I'm sharing with you right now, we have added our Twitter handles. So if you are someone who's on Twitter, or if you feel like you just learned something amazing today and share it, we would love for you to tweet that out. And if you follow us, we'll follow you back. So as we're just starting the webinar, we still have people coming in. If you would do us a favor and find that chat button, that chat icon, and open it. We hope to have a little discussion today, and if you would participate, ask questions, make suggestions, or just if you have there, if you would put that in the chat, and if you feel comfortable and want to come off and share with us through your microphone so we can see your face, we'd love for you to participate that way as well. Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started talking about the inclusive classroom. So I'm not going to read the slide to you, but taking a look at this slide and thinking about the word inclusion or inclusive. You know, in education, we throw around those words like personalized learning, differentiation. When you hear words like that, and especially when you hear a word like inclusion or creating an inclusive classroom, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? And now take it a step further, thinking about those things. Think about your online classroom. And in your online classroom, how have you been able to make that inclusive? So with those thoughts in mind, let's have a little bit of a conversation about what inclusion is, or what an inclusive classroom is, and how we've been able to do that with our online experience. Or have you had some trouble or roadblocks with that? Anybody up for sharing? Do we need to come off?
I have had some roadblocks. I mean, it's really hard. I'm used to being able to accommodate in my classroom for my SPED kids, but I am not there with them to be able to give them their accommodations. So it's hard to give them their accommodations digitally. You can't really give them the accommodations to the fullest extent.
Agree. I mean, in the physical building, we have lots of support to help with accommodations. You know, they might have an opportunity to go to resource. There might be somebody pushing into your classroom and helping them. But now that we've switched over to this online environment, what are our options? What are our choices? Has anybody had any success with this that they would like to share? Or are we all kind of still trying to figure that out?
I use Wakelet. I use the immersive reader in Wakelet, and everything that I put in Google Classroom, I upload it to Wakelet, and I assign my Wakelet page to my students that need modifications.
Wakelet is a wonderful tool. If you aren't aware of Wakelet, put that one on your radar, because it is a great curation resource, but it can be used in so many more ways. And I'm going to do a little plug, because I think we're going to have an upcoming webinar on Wakelet. So stay tuned for that one. And you mentioned something about Wakelet having immersive reader in it that helps with accommodations. And that's really going to be our focus today. So really nice transition. I think one of the things that when we think about inclusion is that we want our kids to own their own learning, and to empower them to own their own learning and being included in that. And I think we all know kids who will, if you take a look at that quote in blue, who will sit there and not be a problem. But they're not going to do anything to stand out, to point out that they're different, that they don't understand, that they don't know what's going on. And if we can have a tool that helps students like that and other students, the learning tool we're going to talk about today will help any student in your classroom, that gives the student a little bit more power over their learning and how they interact with their learning environment. So I have a slide I want you to take a look at, and I'm not going to read this slide, but it has some statistics on here. So if you just take a look at some of these facts, and as you're looking at those, does this seem right to you? Do you agree with this? Would you challenge any of this? And I do want to point out that this information came from a survey taken of teachers in the United States. 14,000 teachers participated in this survey. And these results are from 2014.
I would venture to say they've gone up. The percentages have gone up.
Absolutely.
Anybody challenge any of this or think there's something not quite right? Thinking about your classroom, your general ed classroom.
Shelly, I wonder if the special education percentage is just those that have been identified or what we're qualifying as special education students.
On
The 72%, I just kind of feel like maybe every classroom has some sort of special education or special needs student.
That's a good
In
point,
some way.
because in the research behind this slide, they actually stated that 99% of classrooms have students with special needs or special learning needs, whether that's GTs, you know, whatever form that is.
504s.
It was actually 99%. In looking at this research, and a great place to get research on literacy and its impact, let me look. I was taking a look at dosomething.org, and they had a statistic on there saying that 2/3 of students who can't read proficiently by the end of 4th grade will either end up in jail or on welfare. And I think some of us kind of know that statistic about if we're not reading really well by the end of 3rd grade, the life choices, their life, I mean, it's their life that's on the line.
Absolutely. I think that's why this tool is so important, because it's not just for a few, but it's for so many of our students. If it's 99% of our students that are having some need that need access into the information, I think that this tool is key. Shelly, Miss Amora asked, aren't there more with English as a second language?
I agree. Someone said, I think these statistics are probably low now.
Yeah. In
I mean,
comparison, and how many ELs we have in the classroom.
Yes, I would agree. So when I kind of just taken this information, it's kind of almost like it becomes a moral imperative that we intervene, knowing that they're going to be on a path that I wouldn't choose for my children or anybody's children. But those children are in my classroom, right? So we're going to share with you, like you said, Elena, we're going to share with you that tool that can have an impact on this and actually impact their life. So we have this slide here. If you could just for a moment visualize your students. Kind of think about the students you have and the students you're working with right now. And now I want you to think about your online classroom this week. What activities or assignments were those students going to be interacting with in their online classroom this week? So while you have their faces in mind and you know what they were supposed to be doing, as you look at this slide has, I want to say categories, I guess, of disabilities that students in the general ed classroom might be experiencing. And as you look across these categories, I wonder if certain students aren't popping into your mind. And as you look across, you might even see under mental health, that anxiety and depression, that could be all of our students right now, right? So when we're thinking about these kind of needs or these kinds of disabilities that our students might have, and you're connecting them with your student and the activities and assignments that they were doing this week, would they have been able, or are they able to do those activities and assignments independently? Were we providing some sort of accommodation for the student we know has dyslexia, for the student we know has ADD? And I think,
And that's regardless of the SES.
you know, she kind of felt like there was a gap. Like she knows she's supposed to be doing this, but what can I do? It's online. I'm not there. But what if there was a tool that students could rely on outside of a human being? That if they use that tool, they could be independent in their learning. So that's what we want you to focus on today when we go through our little walkthrough. Think about the student that this might work for, although what we show you is going to be beneficial for all students. So the inclusive classroom, basically, when I think of the inclusive classroom, I think of 4 main categories that schools, I think school districts, schools, teachers, everybody thinks these categories are important: reading, writing, math, and communication. And there are tools available for all of these categories. We would love to be able to talk about all of them, but we're not going to be able to hit on all of them today. I think we're just going to stay right in reading and focus on the learning tools for reading, since we think that can make the biggest impact with your students. And what we'd like for you to see is a demo of Immersive Reader. Has anybody heard of Immersive Reader before? Elena, what are you seeing? Because I'm not seeing. Do we have people who have?
It's Karen Callis, Birdville High School. I use Canvas, and Canvas has Immersive Reader embedded right on it, so all the students can use it all the time.
Awesome. Immersive Reader, just a little bit of background on it. It is a learning tool that was developed by Microsoft, and it has been around going on 5 years now. So it's not really new, but it might be brand new to some of us who didn't know it was out there. Immersive Reader started with, Microsoft has what they call a hackathon and gives their engineers 1 week where they can develop anything they want to develop. And one of the engineers got a request from a parent that said, can you make something that will help my child with reading? And Immersive Reader was born out of that. And as it has been becoming more well-known and used, it has migrated into different tools. So like she was saying, right now we're seeing Immersive Reader in Canvas. We're seeing it in Pear Deck, Wakelet, Flipgrid, and there's that extension we were talking about a little bit before our webinar officially started. We were talking about the Immersive Reader extension in the Chrome browser. So what that means is that you can use this tool on any website. So students can use this tool on any website and in a number of ed tech tools. And those were some, just to name a few. So I'm excited that we've noticed that it's in Canvas. So let's go ahead and do a walkthrough so you can see what Immersive Reader is. And I'm just going to ask you, as we walk through, if some students pop into your mind who might benefit from a tool like this. So I am going to go to the internet, to a website. And I'm going to pretend I'm a student and I need to go to a website to do some research for my animal project. So I am going to go to a kid-safe search engine. Kiddle, and I believe Kittle's in our portal. I think maybe our digital learning people can tell us if Kittle's in our portal or not, but I think it is. So this is a safe search engine for kids. And I'm going to do some research on tiger facts for my research report. So I have some choices and, 21 tiger facts. That's exactly what I need. I will click on that. And as the student opens up the website, we see that there's a lot of text here. And maybe I'm the type of student that struggles with this and needs help in reading and understanding this text. So with the immersive reader extension, which if you can see my screen up in the address bar where the extensions are, when you hover over it, it says read text on this page. It's sort of black and white. This has been pushed out by the district to all student Chromebooks. So this is accessible to your students right now today if they're using that Chromebook, okay? Of course, you can get it from the Chrome Web Store and put it on your own personal device as well. So all the student has to do is select some text. So I'm just going to highlight it and then right click and choose Help Me Read This. The Immersive Reader extension will work on any website. And when I click on Help Me Read This, it's going to open up the tool. Okay, and now we see that the Immersive Reader tool has opened up and I am in Immersive Reader. The first thing that I want you to notice is that all of the distractions are gone. The only thing that's left is the text. So that's all the student has to focus on now. Now here's the game changer for most kids. At the bottom of the page, there's a play button. And all they have to do is click on that play button.
A tiger's tail is about 3 feet long.
And it will start to read the text for them. They can play it over and over as many times as they need to, but they also have the ability to control some of the play settings. If they click on the voice settings icon, they can choose how slow or fast they need that text read to them, or they can choose whether or not they want a male or female voice. So imagine this. If you have the student that's waiting for the teacher to come over and read it to them, or the aide or another student, again, setting them apart, not making them inclusive, but setting them apart that they need something different. If they had access to a tool like this, no one really knows that this is what they're doing, right? And they don't have to wait for anybody.
This is so great. I just want to say this is awesome.
But it gets better. It gets better, friends. Okay. So
Shelly, just real quick.
Go ahead.
So Jeff Samuelson has said that Kittle is in the BISD portal. And then Tony Highlander said it should also show up for any student as long as they are signed up in the Chrome browser on their computer.
Oh, excellent. So they can always go to that safe search engine rather than just going straight to Google. Thank you.
And one more question. Violeta wants to know, is this tool available in Spanish?
Oh, we're going to get to that. Great question. I'm going to have her hold on to that for just a minute, but we're going to work our way to that. So it opens up. We've got all the distractions reduced and I can have it read to me, but as I said, it gets better. On the upper right hand corner of your screen, you're going to see 3 icons. And this allows us more control over what we see. I'm going to go ahead and click on the first one, which is called Text Preferences. And it opens up a window which gives us opportunities to adjust the text size. So if I want, or the student wants, they can enlarge the text as big as it needs to be. So a student who has problems with vision, or when we're thinking about students, you know, using the Chromebooks, they do have a smaller size screen. And if they're looking at a lot of text and it's very tiny, this might be a great way to bring in that text and make it bigger for them. So they can play around with that, get the size that they like, that works for them. Now, research shows that there is something called visual crowding. And visual crowding can be a roadblock for some readers. If visual crowding is an issue, we can turn on increased spacing. And if I turn it on, you'll notice that now there's more of a space or a gap between words and a space between the letters. So if students feel like this is an easier read for them, they'll just keep that on or turn it off. Okay. The next part that they get to choose from is the font. So when Immersive Reader was created, they actually partnered with Made by Dyslexia. And everything in Immersive Reader is research based around struggling readers and around dyslexia. And they chose 3 fonts that have been proven through research that are beneficial and helpful for kids who are learning how to read and learning how to write. So whatever font that website used, the student can choose one of these 3 fonts that might be a little bit better or easier for them to read. And we see Comic Sans here, and sometimes, friends, Comic Sans gets a bad rap because it's not professional looking. And as a professional, we probably don't use Comic Sans all that much in our professional writing because it looks like a kid is writing it. But that's exactly what it is. And one of the things to kind of be aware of is that when students are especially learning how to read and write, the way the letters look matters. So for example, if I chose the first one, Calibri, let's look at that letter G. Is this how we're teaching our students to write a G? Could this be a roadblock for some of our students? And now go back over to Comic Sans. And let's look at the G in Comic Sans. This might be closer to the way we're teaching kids to write letters. So font becomes very important. And
so even in PowerPoint design, Shelly, the font is important in what we're exposing the children in Google Classroom or even in Pear Deck.
Oh my gosh, I think that's a great point. Because right now teachers are designing lessons in Google Slides, they're designing lessons, wherever they're designing them, Wakelets. But taking a moment to stop and maybe being picky about your font might be something you might want to consider. Knowing that, I'm thinking of these 3 students right here. If I just use Comic Sans, immediate kind of accommodation, right? So I agree, Elena. I think maybe taking a little bit of time out to think about how you're designing in the fonts that you're using with your kids can have an effect. And of course, even if you've already designed something, if you bring it into Immersive Reader, they can switch it out. So our last option on this window is themes. And all that means is to change the background color. So students can go in and change the background color. And what this reminds me of is back in the day when I was teaching, students might get tested and I would get an overlay and the students would put an overlay on top of their worksheet that was a color that sort of helped them out. And I'll never forget, I had an experience with a student who was using the overlays, and the student said to me, yeah, I really like it because it keeps the letters on the page. And that was a real eye-opener for me because I don't know what it's like to not have letters on my page. And to know that that student was experiencing something like that, and this was a tool that helped them, that was a great thing. So they have this feature in here, but I mean, even if you're not having a particular reading struggle, but you just like having a different background, it's easier to read. It's nice to know that you can go in here and change backgrounds. So the student can go in and modify this to fit exactly how they want text to look. And those are all of your text preferences. Moving into the next button in the middle are your grammar options. And if we have, I don't know if we have any reading specialists here or any of our dyslexic teachers, they could probably speak a lot more to this. Anybody who's actually teaching reading, this is a great option because you can turn on syllables here. So when students are learning how to read, usually we have them clap, right? But if we turn on syllables, it'll take that text and it'll break it apart so the kids can see the syllables.
I think also, Shelly, something to consider is if you have EL students and if you ask them to look up words in the dictionary, that maybe they focus on just the nouns, the ones that are going to give them the most bang for their buck, before they spend all their time like laboriously going over the verbs and the adjectives and the nouns.
So this speaks to the next section that you can kind of mess with here. If you click on any of these buttons for nouns, it will automatically color code all of the nouns in a piece of writing. And like you said, what a great way for students to see how nouns are just all over this piece of writing, and they're central to what I'm going to be using when I write. So you can turn all of these on or off. I have them all on at the same time, but if you're using a specific program where nouns are a certain color, I know there are some programs out there that people are using, but maybe nouns are blue. You can go and you can change all of these colors to match whatever program it is that you're using. And if you're working with students that struggle with seeing the contrast in color here, you can turn on labels and it will put the labels above the words. So once we talk about starting to teach kids to read and write, the grammar options in this part of the menu might be something that some of your students could look at using. Okay. How are we doing on questions? Should I stop or go on?
Nope.
Doing okay. All right, we're going to my favorite one then. My favorite one is reading preferences. Oh, let me go back here and turn this off. Okay, so reading preferences has a number of options for students. The first one is called line focus. So I remember back in the day, we had those reading rulers, or we would use a straight piece of paper, kind of when we were learning how to read. Well, Immersive Reader has that built in with line focus. So if I turn on line focus, look what it did. It made my little reading ruler, and I can go up and down in this text. Okay. I have right now 1 line, but I can choose 3 lines or even up to 5 lines of text. I was talking with someone recently in a webinar, and they were telling me how they had a student who had a concussion and it was hard for him to focus. So he was using this line focus tool while he was recovering from his concussion. So great for not just, Immersive Reader isn't just for students who are struggling. It can help students or anybody who's has a temporary condition or issue as well. The other feature that I really love in our reading preferences is the picture dictionary. The picture dictionary is ongoing. It is constantly getting better and constantly improving. And that's exactly what it is. It's just a picture dictionary. If I click on a word, it's going to show me a picture of that word. Now, I can't tell you that that's going to work for every word because they don't have every word, but most words, it's going to give a picture support. In addition to picture support, we can also hear how that word is supposed to be pronounced.
Tail. Tail.
So they can get a pronunciation and a visual representation if they're struggling with what that word means. So I like to leave picture dictionary on. And now, Elena, we're going to go back to, was it Violetta's question about other languages?
Yes.
Okay. So we have the translate feature in Immersive Reader. Immersive Reader can translate right now up to 65 languages. So as you click on the translate button, all the different languages that are available. So if I made this or this assignment or this text was in English, but I need Spanish, let me get down, there we go. I'm going to choose Spanish from Mexico. And now I'm going to translate it by word. If I'm reading, but I get stuck on a word, I can click on it and it's going to show me and let me listen to the word in English, but it's also going to show me and let me listen to the word in Spanish.
Equilibrarse.
So I can hear both. But even more than that, I could translate that whole document. So now the entire thing is in Spanish. And maybe I can't read Spanish, but I can understand Spanish. Now I can play it in Spanish.
La cola de un tigre mide unos 3.
So immersive reader is in any language, any one of those 65 languages that you need it to be. I hope that answers her question.
Shelly, we have one question. Sandra asks, does the ruler move automatically if play is used?
Let's see.
Pies de largo y les ayuda a equilibrarse al hacer giros apretados.
It does. So it was, because it was one line, did you see it go? That was fast for me. That was really fast Spanish for me. But let me go back here.
But you can slow down the speed, correct?
Yes.
It's estimated that tiger hunts are only successful.
So it goes line by line if it plays. If I had 3 lines, it would do those 3 lines and then it would play. Okay. How are we doing? Okay.
Yes.
All right. And you know what, friends? That's immersive reader. And if you only use it for the read aloud feature, we still think that's a game changer. But it does have all of those other tools that if you take time to teach your students how to access them, they can independently take control of that text and they're not waiting for somebody to come and sit next to them and help them. And here's the best, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking that one of the things is if you could, when whatever next year looks like, if you could start to use this tool with everybody so that every child feels comfortable. And so by the end of the year, if maybe only a couple are using it, there's no stigma around using the tool.
Exactly. And Elena, I was actually talking to a parent, and the parent was very interested in using this so that they could use it with their child as well. So, just kind of planting a seed. If you're doing something for parent night and want to show parents a way that they can help their children, this tool might be an option, right?
There was something something I read, and it was talking about how parents are having difficulties being able to teach their children, their EL children, how to pronounce things in English. So this would be a good way for them to know how the word is said. So not only is the child being empowered, but the parent is being empowered by learning more English and being able to know how to say the words correctly, because sometimes that's a roadblock in speaking and feeling comfortable in speaking another language, is knowing how it's said.
Great point. And we did, did you say, do we have something?
Shelly, that a lot of our kids are now testing online with all these tools and accommodations. If they start from the beginning knowing how to use these different tools, that's going to just empower them even more when it comes time to take the test, or if they're doing STAR online or Interim online, because they don't know right now how to use them and they just play with them. So this would be great to start from the beginning of the year.
So at least they would have some idea. And speaking of that, Stephanie, we wanted to take a little bit of time to showcase a very practical way that we could do that with testing or assessment. So let's move out of, I'm going to get out of Immersive Reader. So remember I had clicked and selected some text on that website, and I'm in the Immersive Reader extension. To get out, I'm just going to click on this back arrow. It's going to take me back to the website. And now I'm back to where the text was. So we'd like to share with you. Go ahead.
Sorry, one more question. Ms. Amora wants to know, how do you add text? Technology and district sent an email with top tools, and Immersive Reader was the last one. How do you add text?
How do I add text to?
Ms. Amora, could you speak about that?
Okay, so you have this text that came up.
Yes.
So how do you move it if you're working in Canvas?
Oh, in Canvas?
Yes.
Using Immersive Reader in Canvas?
Yes.
Okay. Rosa, I'm going to take your name down, okay?
Okay.
And I'm going to get with you specifically. And it's only because, Rosa, I'm sorry, we're short on time in our webinar.
Oh, that's okay. You know what? I just sent you a note that the district sent an email with top tools for parents to help their kids, and Immersive Reader was the last one. And I watched part of it, so I can go back and watch that. Thank you.
That's okay. We just want to make sure you know how to use it, but it is exactly what we went through right here, that extension.
Okay. All right.
Okay, but we'll touch back. Thank you, Rosa. Where was I? Oh, we were going to show a practical way to use Immersive Reader in assessing students who need something read aloud to them. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that most of you know or have used a Google form. What you might not know is that we also have access to something called Microsoft Forms. We all have access to an Office 365 account in the portal. And if you've never been there, your digital learning specialist can help guide you with this. And especially if you feel like this is something you might want to explore. But once you log into your Office 365 account, you'll see some apps that you're very familiar with, but one of them is called Forms. And it's very similar to Google Forms. The biggest difference with Microsoft Forms and Google Forms is that with Microsoft Forms, Immersive Reader is built in.
Well,
So if I were to create a quiz or an assessment in Microsoft Forms, it's going to automatically have Immersive Reader in it. They don't need to go to the extension, it's just in it. So I want to show you an example of that. This is an example of an assessment that's in a form, and I'm going to show you what this form would look like for students. So if the student clicked on the link to take the assessment, it would look like this. And if they hovered near any text, the Immersive Reader button pops open.
cool.
And if they go over, here's a question, here's my Immersive Reader. Anytime I get near that text, that button is going to pop up. And if they click on the button, it's going to launch Immersive Reader just the way we know it, just like we were in. And there's my play button. It will read the question and it will read the answers. Okay, in order to get back to the question, they're going to click that arrow and now they can answer the question. So this is Immersive Reader built in. I don't need to worry about the extension up in the browser. And if you're thinking, oh, Shelly, Microsoft Forms, what are you telling me? What are you telling me? Well, if you've made a Google form or are familiar with Google Forms, you will be pleasantly surprised at how easy it is to make a Microsoft form. I just want to show you what it looks like, so you will see. So I'm just going to click on Make a New Form. And when it opens up, Google people tell me, does this look similar to Google Forms? Very similar, right? The questions, the responses, where we put our title. Here we're going to add our question, and our question choices are very similar, multiple choice, text, a number of other options. And then when you share it, there's the share button that's very similar. A couple of slight differences. I can do a link or I can do a QR code. I can send my colleagues a template of this, a copy of this, if they want to use it with their students. So if you think that you want to explore creating forms that has the Microsoft Immersive Reader built in, reach out to your digital specialist. Let us know. Reach out to your coaches. We can help you do this. This is an easy way to provide those accommodations where you are not creating explainer videos, or you're not creating some sort of audio text there where you have to take time to read to the student. The tool will do it for you, and the tool will give the students the power to take that learning into their own hand. They don't have to wait, you know. And I think Elena might have been saying this right at the beginning. Correct me if I'm wrong, Elena, that Immersive Reader isn't just for your online classroom. It's for your classroom. You know, it doesn't matter whether or not we're in a physical building or we're in a virtual space. Immersive reader would benefit students, I think, regardless. Okay.
I think that's half the battle on having an inclusive classroom, is that everybody feels comfortable and there's no stigma. There's, why is that kid using this and why is that kiddo using that? If everybody knows about it, then it just becomes part of the classroom repertoire.
Awesome.
Shelly, we have EOYs coming, and they've got the question banks now, and they know where to go to get those. So this would be a great tool to either use it in Office or Google Forms. Have it read to them.
Oh, sorry, Stephanie.
Go ahead.
There's 2 questions. Alexis wants to know, is this compatible in Google Classroom?
Is using Immersive Reader compatible in Google Classroom? So that is a great question, because it depends on what it is you need to be compatible. Immersive Reader works on a website. If in Google Classroom you've made a Google Doc or a Google Slide presentation, a document is not a website. So when they click on that document, Immersive Reader is not going to be available because it's not a website. Now, for Google Docs, I do know a workaround. There is a way you can make it work on Google Docs. I have not discovered a workaround for Google Slides yet. I keep experimenting with Immersive Reader just to see what the limits are and how far I go, but I have not been able to make Google Slides work. But the website itself, yeah, they can select text and use Immersive Reader. If it says help me read this, it'll work for them.
Tony Highlander also talked about Pear Deck and the audio file that you can add to the slides.
What a game changer Pear Deck is with that audio file. Pear Deck does have Immersive Reader built in, but you have to turn it on. If you haven't gone to your Pear Deck account and turned on Immersive Reader, it won't be there for kids. And just last week, they released the ability to put in audio right on the slides. Thank you, Tony, for mentioning that, because that is, I think Elena can speak to that too. She's been using it all this week.
It is so easy.
Yes.
You just click on it, say what you want to say, and the kids, on the kids side, there will be a little headphone icon that the students click on so they can hear. So what a great, I mean, if you're talking about having accommodations or accessibility to be able to hear it and to be able to interact with the text in the way that it's best for them, wow, that's a 2-for-1, powerhouse duo there with Pear Deck.
We've got 2 minutes, Shelly.
2 minutes. So I guess it would be good to hear from the participants. I am sorry we didn't get into the writing. There are tools in writing. There are tools for math and communication. Since we do have a minute, I will bring up a quick example of a writing accommodation. This one actually also works in Google. So if you have students that are struggling with writing or typing, there is a dictate button that students can use in Microsoft Word. And just to be clear, all students and teachers have access to Microsoft Word. You may not be using it, and that's fine, but just so you know that it is there, and there is a dictate button. And the nice thing about that is if you do use the dictate button, when they're done with this, they can go back and have Immersive Reader read back what they dictated, so they can hear what they wrote to help with writing and editing. But if you're using Google Docs also has voice typing. So when you're thinking about those students and you're asking them to type in worksheets and that kind of thing, if typing or using their hands, if they have mobility issues, offering them the option or reminding them that they have the option of voice typing is a great accessibility feature. I think we're probably at 12 o'clock and our time is up.
Thank you for joining us for this innovative learning bite. Remember, if you want to connect with us, you can reach out over social media, Facebook and Twitter, or if you're a Birdville employee, please remember to join the Innovative Learning Bites Kitchen on Canvas. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.